Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Sam Kood. I'm an economist at FCAST, here today to talk about the latest jobs data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this morning, we got the latest numbers, and we saw that the labor market added 73,000 new jobs. This is actually much slower job growth than we've been used to over the past several months. There's another concerning part here is that we saw significant downward revisions to historical data. That's in May and June. So right now, we see that the labor market in terms of job growth is just slowing down. 3-month job growth is just 35,000 jobs a month, which is slower than in 2021 through 2025. So when we actually look at what's going on with the revisions, which is a very eye-popping figure, we saw that combining May and June's job growth, the total was combined down 258,000 jobs. So this chart here shows the blue bar, which is the initial reported employment figures, compared to the orange, which is the downward revisions. Now, revisions are a very normal part of the process of how the government reports data. However, this is a significantly large downward revision that alters the way that we think about the labor market. Back in May and June, we saw pretty solid overall employment growth. That has been since significantly weakened, and this changes our opinion about how the U.S. labor market has performed over the past several months in a more negative territory, to be frank. So when we break down the jobs figures by the sort of major sectors that are hiring, we've been talking consistently about how hiring has had a narrow base. When I say that, that means that there's only a few sectors that have been hiring, primarily healthcare, but then also leisure and hospitality, and then government as well. Now that sort of base has narrowed even further this month, as healthcare was the main sector that added jobs, and then outside of that, we see pretty much flat or contraction across the board. We see particular weakness continuing in manufacturing and professional business services, where both sectors have contracted several months in a row now. So, on the one hand, we just talked about hiring demand. On the other hand, there's another really big sort of factor going on here is the change in the labor supply. So the best way that I think about this is sort of an analogy about a bathtub. We saw that the unemployment rate rose to 4.2% as hiring demand has weakened, but so has labor supply growth. So we have weak hiring demand, but also weak labor supply. So the analogy I think of is if the labor market was a bathtub and the faucet in terms of new people entering the labor market was labor supply growth, that faucet has been slowly turned off. So there's fewer people entering into the labor market as we have an aging population with lower immigration. And then on the other hand, if the drain was the amount of hiring activity that sort of collects that water, that drain is also clogged as well, is that we have sort of almost frozen labor market where we're not getting that many new people entering, and also there's not that much hiring activity going on as well. And we can really see this materialize when we look at just the change in the overall labor force over the past several months. So we saw that in July, the labor force declined as well. So this is the third month in a row that the labor force has declined by nearly 800,000 total. And this is potentially due to immigration policy. We've seen that this is a really large drop in the workforce, and this is similar to sort of the declines in the labor force we saw during the peak of the Great Recession back in the late 2000s. Now, when thinking about how this impacts sectors differently, we see that primarily, this decline in immigration is going to impact sectors like construction, hospitality, or transportation, particularly because they are reliant on a foreign-born workforce. So to summarize everything that I just discussed, today we still see that hiring is concentrated in healthcare, while there are most other industries are flat or contracting. And at the same time, we have restrictive immigration policies that are shrinking the labor force, and they're potentially throttling back hiring demand in what we call standing up jobs in construction or hospitality. And going forward, recruiters should prepare for a weaker hiring environment with lower job growth and potentially the possibility of negative job reports. We have seen for several months job growth has been above 100,000. That sort of growth has come down, and we are potentially heading towards a much slower job market overall. So with that, thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.